Have you ever been to a wedding where everything looked perfect? The flowers were perfect, the music was perfect, the bride looked amazing, the groom looked nervous, the photographer was taking pictures of absolutely everything, the rings, the flowers, the shoes, the ceiling. At one point, I'm pretty sure he photographed a chair. Everything was going according to plan. Well, almost everything. Because nobody knew that the greatest wedding disaster of the year was about to happen. And it all started with one hungry guest. The wedding ceremony ended at 4 o'clock. Dinner was scheduled for 6. That meant the guests had 2 hours to enjoy drinks, take pictures, talk to friends, and wait for the reception to begin. Simple. Except there was one problem. The smell coming from the kitchen. The caterers were preparing roasted chicken, rice, vegetables, pasta, fresh bread, desserts. Everything smelled incredible. And one guest noticed. Let's call him Mr. Hungry. Mr. Hungry had arrived at the wedding ceremony without eating breakfast or lunch. Nobody knew why. Maybe he was busy, maybe he forgot, maybe he thought weddings were all-you-can-eat restaurants. We may never know. But at 5 o'clock, Mr. Hungry started investigating. He walked past the reception hall, stopped, looked left, looked right. Then he saw it, the buffet, beautiful, fresh, untouched, waiting patiently for 6 o'clock. Mr. Hungry checked his watch. 5:07. 53 minutes until dinner, he whispered to himself. Surely one small plate won't hurt anybody. My friend, those words have destroyed many good plans. He picked up a plate, added a little rice, then some chicken, then potatoes, then pasta, then another chicken. At this point, the small plate had become a construction project. But Mr. Hungry wasn't finished. He saw the bread, maybe just one. He took 4. Then someone saw him, another guest. The guest walked over. Are they serving food already? Mr. Hungry froze. This was the moment. He could have told the truth. He could have said, no, dinner starts at 6. But instead, Mr. Hungry looked at the guest, looked at his plate and said, I think so. That sentence changed everything. The second guest immediately grabbed a plate. Then another guest saw them. Then another. Within 3 minutes, there were 12 people standing at the buffet. Nobody had announced dinner. Nobody had opened the buffet. Nobody had spoken to the caterer. But somehow, everyone believed dinner had started. This is one of the greatest mysteries of weddings. You can announce the seating arrangement 5 times. Nobody listens. You can announce where the bathrooms are. Nobody listens. But let one person touch the buffet. Suddenly, everyone becomes extremely observant. The caterer walked out of the kitchen, stopped, and stared. There were now 30 people eating. The caterer looked at the clock. 5:15. Dinner was supposed to start at 6. She called the wedding coordinator. Did you open the buffet? The coordinator said, no. The caterer looked at the guests, then looked back at the coordinator. Then why are 30 people eating? The coordinator ran into the reception hall. And that's when things got worse, much worse. Because someone had taken a picture of their plate and posted it in the wedding group chat. The message said, food is ready. Ladies and gentlemen, the wedding had 200 guests. Within minutes, people started appearing. Guests came from the garden. Guests came from the photo area. Guests came from the parking lot. One guest appeared so quickly, nobody remembered seeing him at the ceremony. The buffet line grew. 30 people, 50 people, 80 people. The wedding coordinator grabbed the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, dinner has not officially started. Nobody moved. She tried again. Please return to your seats. One guest shouted. But I already have a plate, another guest said. I've been waiting in line, someone else yelled. Are we supposed to put the food back? The caterer closed her eyes. This was not in the contract. Meanwhile, the bride and groom were outside taking romantic sunset pictures, completely unaware. The photographer said, look into each other's eyes. Beautiful. Hold hands. Wonderful. Now walk slowly toward the camera. Perfect. Then the bride's phone started ringing. She ignored it. It rang again and again and again. Finally, she answered. It was her cousin. The cousin said, don't panic. Now let me tell you something. When somebody calls you on your wedding day and begins the conversation with, don't panic, you should immediately start panicking. The bride said, what happened? There was silence. Then the cousin said, "The guests started eating." The bride laughed. "Okay." The cousin continued, "Dinner wasn't open." The bride stopped laughing. "How many people?" Another pause. "A lot." "How much is a lot?" The cousin looked at the buffet. "Most of them." The bride and groom rushed back to the reception hall, and there it was, chaos. Plates everywhere, guests eating, servers confused, the wedding coordinator holding a microphone that nobody was listening to. And Mr. Hungry? Mr. Hungry was sitting peacefully at a table, eating dessert. Dessert! This man had completed the entire dining experience before the bride and groom had even entered the reception. But the biggest problem was still coming, because the caterer had calculated food portions for 200 guests, not 200 guests eating dinner, before dinner, and then possibly eating dinner again during dinner. The bride looked at the caterer. "Are we going to have enough food?" The caterer took a deep breath. "We should." That word, should, did not make anybody feel better. They needed a solution, fast. The caterer gathered the kitchen team. They counted everything: chicken, rice, pasta, vegetables, bread, desserts. The situation wasn't terrible, but it wasn't good. Then one server walked into the kitchen. "We have another problem." Everybody turned around. "What?" "The groom's uncle wants to know when dinner starts." The kitchen became silent. The caterer said, "He's eating right now." The server nodded. "Yes." "Then why is he asking when dinner starts?" The server shrugged. He said this was just a snack. A snack? The man was holding a plate large enough to have its own zip code. The caterer knew they had to take control, so she made a decision: close the buffet immediately. The servers removed the serving utensils. The coordinator made another announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, the buffet is temporarily closed." You would have thought they announced the cancellation of the wedding. Guests started whispering. "What happened? Did they run out of food? I knew I should have taken more chicken." One guest looked at his half-empty plate and seriously considered getting back in line. But there was no line. The buffet was closed for 45 minutes. And that's when something amazing happened. People started talking, dancing, taking pictures, meeting other guests. You know, the things people are supposed to do at weddings. Behind the scenes, the catering team was working fast. They reorganized the remaining food, adjusted the portions, prepared extra side dishes, brought out backup trays, and created a new serving plan. This time, there would be servers controlling the portions. No more self-service, no more mountains of chicken, no more guests building skyscrapers out of mashed potatoes. At 6:30, the reception officially began. The bride and groom entered, the music played, everyone cheered. Speeches were made, people laughed, the bride finally relaxed. Then the wedding coordinator made the announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, dinner is now served." Everyone turned toward the buffet, including the people who had already eaten. The caterer watched them stand up, slowly. She whispered, "You have got to be kidding me." Mr. Hungry stood up too. The caterer walked over. "Sir," he smiled. "Yes, you already ate." Mr. Hungry looked offended. "That was earlier." The caterer stared at him. He stared back. Then Mr. Hungry said, "I've been dancing." "Sir, you danced for 12 minutes. But this time, the catering team was prepared. The buffet moved smoothly. Everyone received food. The portions were controlled. The guests were happy. And somehow, there was enough food. Barely. At the end of the night, the bride walked over to the caterer. "Thank you for saving my wedding." The caterer smiled. "That's what we do." Then they heard a voice behind them. "Excuse me?" They turned around. It was Mr. Hungry, holding an empty container. He smiled. "Is there any food left that I can take home?" The caterer stared at him. The bride stared at him. The wedding coordinator stared at him. Even the photographer lowered his camera. And somewhere in the kitchen, a chicken tray quietly gave up. And that is how one hungry guest almost caused the great wedding buffet disaster. The lesson? Never assume guests know when the buffet is open. Have a clear catering plan. Have someone controlling the food service. Communicate with your guests, and most importantly, never underestimate one hungry person with confidence and an empty plate. Now I need to know, have you ever been to a wedding where guests started eating before they were supposed to? Or maybe you've seen something even crazier? Tell us your funniest wedding food story in the comments. And if you enjoy hilarious food stories, catering tips, wedding advice, and the real situations that happen behind the scenes at events, subscribe to Catering Tips, Food and Catering. Turn on your notifications so you don't miss the next story. Because trust me, when food, weddings, and hungry guests come together, there is always another story. See you in the next video.